Hello, welcome to Martechify. This is Tina Schweiger. I am so excited today to bring you Christopher Dean. He goes by Dean. He is with Wellhub, and I'm going to talk with him about some really interesting things he's been doing in marketing. Dean, can you give us a quick intro for yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Tina. I'm really excited about chatting today. As you mentioned, I go by Dean. I lead our content marketing and integrated campaigns discipline at Wellhub. I've been there for about 2 years and really just kind of expanding on a rather kind of sinuous path along content marketing and being able to kind of explore different avenues there that I'm excited to talk to you about today. And Wellhub's been fantastic. It's just wonderful working for a company that actually cares about employee well-being, and it's been a dream, 2 years of a dream. So
Yeah, and Wellhub is all about wellness and the well-being of all employees. And you're a global company, right? You
that's
didn't even
right.
originate here in the U.S. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, we were founded in Brazil. We've been out for about 13, 14 years, founded in Brazil. And that's one of the things I love about it is we have such a heavy cultural, like our Brazilian influence on the culture. And that has just really kind of helped us maintain who we are and our identity as we do this global expansion. And it feels like we've stayed true to the mission throughout this whole thing. And yeah, it's all about wellness. If it doesn't make you well, then don't do it. Right?
Oh, what a great way to live your brand. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
And your personal background, what brought you to this point in your career?
Yeah, actually, out of school, I graduated in civil engineering, so quite a bit different than than engineering and than marketing. And I found out pretty quickly that the engineering world was quite different than I thought it was going to be. I thought as a civil engineer, I'd get to design and build these beautiful things and have a lot of fun, and kind of really, hold the whole analytics side of thing I was really into as well. But once you kind of get into it, you realize how structured it is and how formatted it is, and there's really no room for creativity. And an interesting thing happened in that my first career, my first job. We did a rebrand. We rebranded our company name, and I was working with a bunch of engineers. They couldn't care less about marketing and branding, and so I got to do that. And I had so much fun learning about brand identity and how it represents your culture and your mission. And so that really kind of like put me on a path to like, hey, maybe I should try out marketing. And so I went back to school, got the MBA just because I felt like I had to get some kind of piece of paper that said I could also do marketing. And then worked for a number of companies, really defining. This is early in the, kind of before content marketing was really called content marketing, but really focused on long form content in all of my jobs. And I just love that because again, there's value in the content by itself. Like yes, we're trying to sell a product. Yes, we're trying to sell a service. But I love content marketing because again, we're creating stuff that provides value in and of itself. And so it started out as like technical reports and magazines, like there was old prints, like the old print days, and moved into SEO and blog content and, the big surge in SEO content with Google. And then really expanding beyond that into video and audio and all other forms of content, which has really kind of been wonderful, and being able to explore that. And ultimately ended up here at Wellhub. So it's been quite a ride.
Well, I do like the background that you bring to the content marketing. I don't meet people often that come from that engineering background,
Yeah.
particularly civil engineering, and then into content marketing. It seemed like you might have had a gap in the creativity that you were looking for in designing bridges and infrastructure that you could find in marketing.
Yeah.
I can really see how you got where you got. Um, that leads me to, I think, one of the most interesting things that I learned about your work as we were talking initially is the content campaign that you've been doing in the business to business space. I thought was very unique and something I hadn't heard about before. I've heard about things like this in direct to consumer marketing, but it does lean a little bit more on the idea of content as entertainment. And I think in the B2B marketing space, we really get caught up in, pushing features and pushing benefits and really trying to hone in on our differentiators and all those kinds of great things, which are wonderful. But we kind of do forget that there's a human on the other side who doesn't like to be bored. So
100%.
I love how you've created something that's not boring because I think we all need to be a little bit less boring in our marketing.
Yeah.
So Tell me a little bit about Murder in the HR and how you
Yeah.
got there.
Yes, Murder in HR. That's our fictional podcast. Really kind of like where that started from was, again, we were founded in Brazil, and really built, growing our market presence in the U.S. And so we were really lacking the brand awareness that we had in Brazil. I mean, we still have great brand awareness, but we wanted to grow that significantly, and we wanted to do that very quickly. And so, as you said, B2B content can be quite dry, very feature focused, and, guides and, all of these lead magnets and things like that. We really wanted to do something to stand apart from the noise. And, at the time, nobody was doing these fictional podcasts, especially in the B2B space. And so we found a great partner, Caspian, who's located in San Francisco, and started this journey with them to create something truly unique, that is a fictional podcast, kind of in the vein of Clue. Very funny, very lighthearted, plenty of twists and turns. Like, the script is like, it's if you've ever listened to it, I encourage you all to listen to it. We have 2 seasons out. The script, we really focused on creating this wonderful storyline, where you have character arcs and all of the things that you would expect out of a top award-winning TV show, but lighthearted. And really, what we wanted to do, is bring levity to the lives of our HR people, because that's our audience, is HR leaders. And and if you think about your HR person, they deal with so much stuff that you'll never even know about, right? I mean, just like having the hard conversations, having the embarrassing conversations, and just living that life all day. We wanted to kind of like bring a little levity to them and say, like, hey, listen, we hear you, we appreciate you, this is for you. And that's really why we wanted to do this. And bringing in, and so we have, like, season 1, we had Brett Gilman and Kate Mora. Season 2, we brought back Kate Mora, and we had Ben Schwartz and Adam Devine and a few others. So really bringing that talent to the table really elevated this thing kind of beyond just a home-baked podcast. Like, it's a legit show, and it was so much fun to make.
I think it's amazing that, like, with Wellhub and it all being about wellness, you actually didn't go for wellness as the topic
Yeah,
of your podcast. You went for something that was meaningful for your target audience and what would just entertain them.
yeah,
And I mean, I think that's a little bit contrary to what a lot of content marketers would even recommend.
yeah.
So that's really interesting. And being that it's so innovative and different, I mean, how did you get your leadership to buy off on this?
Yeah, that was a trick. It was a little bit tricky. Whenever you're doing something big and bold and brand new, that costs a little bit of money. Yeah, rightfully so. You're going to get questions. You're like, why are we doing this? Like, fictional podcasts, like, and there's not a lot of benchmarks in this. Like, there wasn't a lot of people doing it. But with the research that we did a little research to kind of say, like, hey, is this going to resonate with the with the audience? I had a CMO at the time that just was really into kind of taking risk and big swings, and it just felt like this was the right thing to do. Like, the investment was it was large, but it wasn't significant in terms of our overall budget. So we weren't going all in on this. But again, we had done kind of the test case with the audience. And this is something that they just got so excited about. They're like, I would love this. This would be amazing. And so, kind of putting together that case with a little bit of a focus group, if you will, to bring that to light, and also to really kind of demonstrate the overall value, because we're creating an asset here. Like, yes, it's content, and yes, we want to acquire a new audience with this. But at the end of the day, we still have a show that we can use in all of our channels. And what was really interesting is that our sales team was wonderful in this whole process. Of course, they ask questions like, hey, is this the right use? Like, we'll trust you guys. Is this the right use of budget? But if you say it is, that's great. But then once they saw the product and they got to see the episodes, and they got to use them in their outreach and in their conversations, then it became like, hey, we have a really cool thing that nobody else can offer to kind of like start a conversation. They're great conversation starters. And as one of my sales colleagues says, like, when you put murder in the subject line of any email, your open rate goes through the roof. So again, it just gave them a little bit different way of kind of interacting with prospects.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was a fiction podcast, that's for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. Totally
Well,
fiction.
without many benchmarks, on this kind of a project, how did you define? I mean, you're a data guy. Like, how
Yeah.
did you define some quantifiable, achievable metrics that you
Yep.
could use to determine if this is successful or not?
Hmm. Yeah, totally. There was quite a few metrics that we looked at, but the ultimate metric was downloads. It's a podcast. It's on Apple, and Google Play and Spotify, and so we were interested in downloads. And so interestingly enough, we set a benchmark of 60,000 downloads for season one. And that was really kind of based on benchmarking against other B2B content. And we did factor in the fact that this was fictional and that it might apply to a broader audience. So we looked at downloads. We also wanted to see traffic to our website because we put links in the show notes and had that the UTM parameters to be able to see for driving traffic. And then we actually because we were recording traffic, then we can also see, hey, are we creating actually any net new leads here? The interesting thing is that we set that the primary goal was downloads of 60,000. The end of season two, the end of season one, we had 1.2 million downloads. So we kind of undershot our goal there, and again, it just like this thing just blew up, just bigger than we ever would have imagined.
1.2 million.
1.2 million downloads.
Are there even that many professionals in HR?
No, so that's a good point. So we obviously reached, extended way beyond our HR audience too, which, it's just, that's a testament kind of the entertainment value of this, and that, it's like The Office, right? The Office, is appealing to most people out there. And, again, we were trying to build brand awareness in the US. So this was English speaking, right? And so our primary really our only audience was the US. We got some downloads from UK and some other English speaking areas, but this was really a US play, and we had 1.2 million downloads. So we were very happy with that. Yeah.
Wow. And so web traffic improved, I'm guessing.
Yep.
And yeah, were you able to put a nice shiny presentation for your leadership that shows some great leads? And
Yeah,
how many got?
yes. Well, and also, what I'll say is like the real that I mean, like, yes, everybody's was ecstatic about the downloads and the traffic and the leads, but what was really cool about this whole thing is the stories that are generated because of this, and like talking to your sales team and saying like, hey, this came up, in our conversation, and so we use Gong, and you can do a keyword search for murder in HR and see how many times that comes up in the conversation, which was quite a lot more than I thought. And then we had a prospect, wonderful company that reached out, and they have a murder mystery group that gets together and they listen to and watch like and read murder mystery kind of things, and so they reached out, and of course they were huge fans, and they said, hey, can you come introduce the last episode of season one to the HR department, and we can kind of have a little fun with this, and you can tell us a little bit more about it. And I was like, absolutely. And I was just thinking there was going to be 3 people there, but the whole HR department was there, and they were dressed up in character, and it was this whole thing, and it was right around Halloween, which was perfect. And then they recorded it and showed it to their Asia Pacific team later, and I don't know, it was wonderful. I mean, they were just like great, and as the person who was involved in this, it was so much fun. It was just like we're there talking about this wonderful, fun piece of content, and it was a great experience.
I love it when business is fun.
Mm,
It is so awesome.
absolutely.
Uh, so I want to put on my hat for the complexity of technology that we're dealing with in the marketing space at
Yeah.
Martechify. We talk about that a lot. Massive tech stacks, huge customer data platforms, massive amounts of analytics. When it comes to something like this entertainment content that is really driving a lot of traffic and awareness and downloads, how does it serve some of those? Do you have like a larger tech stack on the back end that this is serving? How does that really benefit your ecosystem?
Yeah, totally. So from a download perspective, that's a metric that does not fit into our current marketing stack. I mean, it's just a unique, different kind of, content. And so you're really kind of, you're restricted by what the platforms, will allow you to see, and then of course we do have some tools that allow us to dig a little bit deeper there. And so that's one of the reasons that we wanted to track traffic to our website and to leads too. Now, this was not meant to, again, that was lower on the list of KPIs was traffic and leads because, again, if you think about, listen to a podcast, you go up to Apple Play or Spotify and you listen to it in platform. And so, I'll get back to the marketing stack question in just a second, but we had ad roll in there, and we also had organic mentions of Wellhub, and we wove in kind of this concept of wellness throughout. And so, one thing that we looked at was, brand awareness, and we look at a lot of things for brand awareness. One thing that we look at that I don't think I know some people out there look at this, but we look at branded search traffic quite a bit, and how many people are searching for Wellhub after we do a big advertising activity, because again, that branded traffic shows some awareness of your brand, and they're searching for it by name. And so we're looking at we use Ahrefs quite a bit to see keyword search volume around those branded terms. We're obviously comparing that to everything in Google Trends. I mean, Google Trends and Ahrefs are always up on my screen at all times. But the traffic aspect is really kind of that's where it taps into our legitimate content ecosystem. But once again, that was not really meant to drive traffic. And so that's where you have to kind of tap into Gong and, do your keyword research in there and all of your other platforms and kind of piece together this overall story of how well it did. It's not like SEO content, which is completely measurable in our tech stack. It's just a little bit removed from the tech stack, which makes it a little bit challenging, to be honest.
Yeah, one of the things that occurred to me too, I'm sure that this probably was part of your strategy in some way, is if you're really reaching outside of the hyper specific target audience for your organization, I'm wondering if you end up with a little bit of a swell of end consumer demand. Like if your employee is the end consumer and the one who's benefiting from the wellness programs that Wellhub brings, do you end up with actual employees going to their HR team and saying, "Hey, can we get Wellhub? I think it's really great." Did it go that far?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got stories about that. It's those are qualitative, stories that bubble up. Sometimes you'll see some of that stuff popping up on social media. Sometimes, again, you'll see that in Gong calls and things like that. But again, you kind of have to go searching for them and and piece them together. There's not this grand dashboard. I would love to, me being a numbers guy, would love to have this grand dashboard that's popping in everything and every touch point of this podcast. But there's all of those APIs at least don't exist, to kind of boil that up. And so it's part of this is very much a manual process to kind of piece that together.
Wow.
It's quite a bit different than the other content we create. Again, that's more digitally focused and very, very trackable.
Do you have future episodes planned?
Yeah, so we did season 2 last year, which was amazing, and we're talking about season 3, and we do have great partners in that. We're doing working on this with Bamboo HR. They've been wonderful in this whole process, and so yeah, we're trying to figure out where to take it and what's the next step. Yeah.
Any big challenges that you might have looking forward as you're moving this campaign into the next coming years and seasons? What would you like to improve about it, change about it? What kind of brings it to life in a new way?
Yeah, well, it's one thing. It's a thing that we tested, that we tried, this entertainment aspect of marketing, and we saw great success with it. And so what I'll say is we're really leaning into that entertainment value of content and to a bigger degree right now, and I'm sure a lot of companies right now, investing a lot in multimedia and kind of expanding, heavily into video and into audio and different forms of audio and different kinds of podcasts and these kinds of things. And so, part of that is educational. We always want to educate our audience if they need it and they want it. So we're going to educate them and answer their questions. We also want to entertain them, with things like HR leaders and some other episodic, short form video content that we're working on that could be a lot of fun. And then we like the edutainment, kind of the combination of the two, which, serves a business purpose, but keeps people engaged, and rises above the noise. And so, again, like I think that, like what I'm excited to see is the video content that the team is going to be creating, over the coming year and 18 months, especially the entertaining value of that. Because in the B2B space, sometimes that's risky area. That's like uncomfortable area for us, and so testing the waters, and we have this success with Murder in HR to kind of point at. And we never want to offend, humor is a very fine line to walk. You want to bring levity and fun to this, and sarcasm without offending anybody. And so that's a very fine line to walk. It's an art. But I think that we can do that very well, and I'm excited about some of the short form episodic content that's to come. And our social media, partnering with our social media team has just been wonderful, and they're great to work with, and they bring a lot to the table from a entertaining value as well.
I bet your social media team loves you. One last question. There's so many folks in the Martechify community that I've mentioned your campaign to specifically, and everyone is really admires what you're doing. I would have to ask you for any advice that
Yeah.
you would have, whether it's planning a campaign like this, executing it, getting buy-in, any of the things that we've talked about. Do you have any advice for a marketer at another company who's like, hey, I want to try our hand at some entertainment and B2B. Uh,
Yeah.
what should I do?
Yeah,
What should I worry about?
absolutely. Yeah, it's like, building that case is important, and I think it's great to kind of do that. Like there's qualitative research, and there's more B2B fictional podcasts and shows that are coming out now. So it's like it's not as untapped ground anymore. So there's a lot of use cases you can point to. Have conversations with those companies that sponsor that stuff, and to kind of see the impact that they got out of that, and kind of build your case. You're asking for downloads, which translates to brand awareness. But also, as you're selling this to your C-suite, or whoever your stakeholders are, you need to be clear about the purpose of this. Like, if you're trying to sell this as a massive like MQL generator or opportunity validated generator, like that, you're kind of missing. That's not the intent of it. You have to move it way up into the funnel, and so this is more of a brand awareness play, and so you have to think of it in that regards, and that's how you have to position it and sell it. Because again, you want to continue to do this, right? You don't want to invest and try something and it doesn't deliver the metrics that you thought, and you never get to do it again. So you have to be up front with that. And then what I
That's so
would say is
great.
like,
I think the setting expectations with
yeah,
something like this is huge. I
absolutely.
imagine it makes the doors way easier for your sales team to open, though, once you do have that brand awareness. I think brand
Right.
awareness is sometimes one of the most underrated
Oh yeah,
value metrics in marketing.
yeah, absolutely. It really, really is. And then once you get the approval and it comes into creating the content, keep in mind that this is entertaining and that audiences have very little tolerance for being sold to when they're being entertained. And so and again, if you don't organically tie it in there in a very soft way, or if you don't do it kind of obvious but kind of laugh at that fact, you're gonna turn people off, and you're gonna read that in the comments, and you're gonna see that in the stars and the ratings. This has to be entertainment first, to build brand awareness, and then use your ad roll to tell your brand story. Don't try to make this a big long commercial for your brand. That will not work. Period. It'll never work. Use the ad roll to tell your story, and then leave the entertainment value of the rest of it.
Such great advice. I was so excited to talk to you about this, and it's been such a delightful conversation. Thanks so much, Christopher Dean. This is Tina
Ah,
Schweiger with Martechify.
thanks, Tina.